Good afternoon and welcome to the IndigeFuse Q&A session. My name is Dr. Karletta Chief and I'm an associate professor and extension specialist at the University of Arizona. I'm also the PI of the NSF IndigeFuse training program at the University of Arizona, which sits on the traditional homelands of the Tohono O'odham and Pasco Yaqui peoples, whose care and keeping of these lands allow us to be here today. And today, the purpose of this Q&A session is to share with you the IndigeFuse program and encourage you to apply to our program. We have an upcoming deadline at the end of this month, and we're here to answer any questions you may have and to tell you a little bit about our program. So the order of today's session will start with introduction by me to explain the background of the IndigeFuse program, and then we'll have our own trainees tell about their experience as being a trainee, and then we'll have a Q&A. If we have an opportunity, we'll do breakout rooms to get more intimate settings of Q&A. So we'll just really go by the flow of the dynamics of today's session. The IndigeFuse stands for Indigenous Food, Energy, Water Security, and Sovereignty program, which is a program funded by the National Institute of National Science Foundation. And I am the lead PI, but we have a great team of faculty and staff, and as well as the Net College, who support this effort. Worldwide, approximately 370 million Indigenous people who live in over 90 countries represent 90% of the cultural diversity and hold 20% of the land that maintains 80% of the world's remaining biodiversity. Indigenous people often lack access to energy, water, and food infrastructure. In the United States, 14% of Native Americans lack access to electricity. 30% of our partner on the Navajo Nation are not connected to central power or potable water. Indigenous peoples often lack access to energy, water, and food infrastructure. So on the Navajo Nation, this is the focus of our training program and activities. The Navajo Nation is a food desert with only 13 grocery stores across a terrain that's equivalent to the size of the state of Massachusetts. The cost of hauling water is quite high at about $13 per 100 gallons. So the IndigeFuse program, the vision is to develop a workforce of students who have intercultural awareness, fuse expertise, water and agricultural technology, and to work towards water and food security. Currently, we have 26 trainees consisting of PhDs and masters, 40% of whom are Native American. And part of our goal is to decolonize the training so that our students can be truly aware of the challenges facing Indigenous communities, have respectful partnerships and collaboration, and engage in co-design with the communities. Our goal is to have a unique on-site research and training opportunity for our graduate students that spans across engineering, science, and social sciences. So our approach is to integrate each aspect of the training and education with their research that can span across these engineering, social, and physical sciences. And I will talk further about how we're integrating them. So in this training program, our objectives are to train graduate students to integrate fundamental materials and energy with unit and systems concept to problem solve while understanding the society in which they are working. We also work to enhance graduate student communication skills by providing teaching opportunities at tribal colleges or within the tribal communities. We train our graduate students how to work with Indigenous communities, and then we also support the pathways of tribal college students in FEWS fields. We work with communities to develop community-run and maintain water and agricultural systems. So our educational pedagogy is that the training is interdisciplinary, supports co-learning, and supports systems thinking. The training components of our trainees is that, like all students, have major courses that they have to fulfill, but also that if they're a PhD student, they would complete a FEWS minor. We have professional development through our workshops and our seminars. We have cultural immersion experiences. We focus our training on a pilot project. All our students do FEWS research and an internship in industry. So our research theme is focused around the development of off-grid technologies in water, greenhouse, and solar to address the food, energy, water insecurities in Indigenous communities. We have a big team, and it includes faculty across various engineering disciplines. For instance, Dr. Kim Ogden is from Chemical and Environmental Engineering, as well as Bob Arnold. Dr. Casera is in Agricultural Biosystems Engineering. Aaron Ratcliffe is in Material Science and Engineering. Kelly Simmons Potter is in Electrical Engineering and Optical Sciences. We also have faculty in social sciences, including Valerie Shirley in education, Ben Columbi in American Indian Studies. And our partner at Diné College, Benita Litson, is in the land grant office. We also have supporting staff to help the program. That includes Torrin Anderson, who's the outreach coordinator, Cara Duncan, who assists in program coordination of the graduate students. And then we have an evaluator that evaluates our program. All our trainees have a lead connection to one of our core faculty, but we also have IndigeFEWSS faculty that are even more dispersed across campus that can serve as the primary advisor for our trainees. So when you apply, we encourage you to talk to one of our core faculty so they know about your application, they can advise you on your application, they can provide a verbal summary of your application when we're doing the review. But then within your own department, you may have a primary faculty. Sometimes our trainees their primary faculty is one of the core faculty, but that's not a requirement. We just want you to touch base with one of us that's most relevant to your field. So our partnership is with Diné College. Diné College is a tribal college in Arizona on the Navajo Nation, and we're working with the land grant office. And the land grant mission is to connect with the local Navajo community to empower them on various aspects of food, agriculture, ranching, and so forth. Our trainees are very active in this partnership, particularly through teaching at Dine College. And so our trainees develop learning modules, and they train tribal college students on food, energy, water. We were able to develop a off-grid solar nanofiltration unit for Dine College, and this is now sitting at Dine College. This is used to train the students, and also Dine College is able to use this to do their outreach. So an example of their learning modules is consists of independently packaged units that can be modified for the tribal college instructor, and includes an instructional guide, a PowerPoint, hands-on activity, and assessment tool. These are photos of our students at Dine College and the Dine College tribal college students who learned about the unit. They were trained all week for 1 week at Dine College by our students and our faculty. And at the end of the unit, they trained the community on what they learned, and they received the certificate. Our students also are engaged in a community-based partnership. So they go into the community and learn about the community. They listen to community members, share their experience and ideas, and they have an immersion experience that informed their research. For example, our trainees spend time with a family where they experience how it is to live remotely, to not have access to energy or running water, while learning about the local worldviews about food, energy, and water. We hold a seminar every semester where we're able to do professional development with our trainees and to read important literature that's important to their training. For example, we may have workshops on technical writing or scientific communication. We may have one on just protocols of being a researcher. For example, this semester, our students are focusing on decolonizing methodologies and reading a book by Linda Smith. Our PhD minor was developed several years ago on IndigeFEWSS, and our students are required to take one course in American Indian Studies, one course in the fundamentals of food, energy, water systems, one course in food, energy, water nexus, and then one course in a capstone. This minor is open to all our students across campus. We also have a Native Voices in STEM series where we invite speakers that are working with Indigenous communities. Our next one is with Dr. Celso Villegas from Tohono O'odham, and I encourage you to check our seminar series out and join us. After each seminar series, we have our students talk to the speaker and ask questions and really engage in dialogue with the speaker. We also have workshops, like for example, we're having one coming up on cultural humility that is a collaboration with other programs on campus. The course that all students take within the IndigeFuse minor is called CHI 514, Sustainable Water Supplies for Remote Communities. And in this course, the students really get an opportunity to work with their cohort across disciplines about off-grid technologies. We also collaborate with other NRTs. There's many NRTs across the United States. We collaborated with the UC Berkeley NRT and held a co-infuse workshop where we talked about food, energy, water systems from an Indigenous perspective. And we had Dine College as a co-host, and we had experts like Dr. David Begay talk about Dine perspectives. We also talked about what it means about co-design and decolonizing Fuse. We had various speakers from the community speak. In this workshop, we had about 500 individuals attend. Our trainees serve as role models for Native American students, especially those that want to go into STEM and to do work that is important to their community. So oftentimes we have opportunities to do outreach and to help high school students in their science projects. More recently, we've been responding to the COVID pandemic as related to lack of access to food, energy, and water. So this is an ongoing effort that we've been really steering off of, and we've been able to donate 900 pounds of produce to the Navajo Nation. Our students are involved in various aspects of this project. So we're accepting applications now, and it's been really fun and exciting to work with our students from all over the place. And I hope that you would be interested in applying, and I can provide more information through further discussion. So at this time, I'll go ahead and turn it over to the IndigeFEWSS program coordinator, Kara Shupa.
Thank you very much, Karletta, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We have several trainees, current trainees with us who can speak to what it is to be a trainee, what their experience has been. And then I'm on deck to answer some of your more technical questions. And of course, Dr. Chief and Torin Anderson are here as well. So please feel free to I'm sorry, I jumped ahead of myself. We were supposed to hear from the trainees first before we moved on to question and answer. Thanks so much, Torin, for keeping me straight on that. So Torin has popped a question into the chat, and I wonder if one of our current trainees would volunteer to speak a little bit about her or his experience as a trainee. And I see that at this time we have Marissa and Amy on the line.
Hi, I'd be happy to answer that question. So I am a IndigeFuse master student, first year with IndigeFuse, but this is my last year as a master student. I'm working with Dr. Murat Kachira in the Biosystems Engineering Department with focus in controlled environment agriculture. And speaking more broadly than just a focus on agriculture, as far as how IndigeFuse has supported my future goals, well, my main goal as an engineer is not to just go get a job, work for a company, design, build things. I really want my career to have an emphasis on improving the lives and creating more sovereignty for people in socioeconomically vulnerable societies and communities. And I was really excited to get involved with IndigeFuse because I wanted to frame my master's education in a way that would prepare me for finding a job like that. I didn't just want to like, okay, go get the easiest thing you can. I wanted to really frame how I wanted to pursue my career. And I think that IndigeFuse is really helping with that. It's not just the research itself, but really through all of the engagement. With COVID, it's been a little bit limited since I've been, but through our virtual workshops and through the IndigeFEWSS 696, it's really been helpful to learn how to frame, how to solve issues in the context of the problems going on with these within Indigenous communities and taking in different perspectives. And I think that's where it's been been the most impactful. And as far as what drew me to apply to IndigeFuse, I guess I've answered that a little bit. Also, I was just really excited to see a program that is doing what I came into controlled environment agriculture for. Everyone talks about, at least as far as I've seen, like the big companies, vertical farming, agri-tech, they're all talking about bringing controlled environment agriculture like for the people, but what you actually see is really it's just the people who can afford those high priced greens. And what I see controlled environment agriculture is as potentially is to actually bring fresh food access to people who wouldn't have access to it otherwise, not just get better quality to people who can afford it. And I feel like that's what IndigeFuse is actually trying to do, is address these issues that I came into the first place. So that's what drew me to it.
Thank you so much, Amy. I really appreciate having your perspective. And I see also that Marissa is with us today. And Marissa, I wonder if you would look at the same prompt from the chat and speak to that, speak to the IndigeFuse experience and what's been most impactful to you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Cara. My name is Marissa Gonzalez, and I am a chemical engineering major, 4th year PhD student. And the traineeship has supported me in many ways. I guess the biggest thing is like as far as like my future goals, I've wanted to be a professor for a very long time, and I'm not sure if that's going to be the path that I end up taking or anything like that, but I think the traineeship has prepared me as a professional, because just as far as the classes we've taken, the support from IndigeFuse, and it's made me very adaptable in multiple contexts, where my engineering can apply to many different places. And I just didn't have that kind of exposure until I had this scholarship. It's been most impactful to me because I was able, like, the reason I wanted to be a professor was to teach students. I really enjoyed being a math tutor at the U of A when I was an undergrad. And so I was really excited at the prospect of being able to teach whatever I knew to other students that could help them with their future goals. And then I tell this story really often, but as a trainee, we were able to go to, before COVID, sadly, but we were able to actually go to Dine College and teach students. And I think, and the goal was to teach them, but I learned so much more in how you could teach these engineering concepts and make it, I don't know, frame it in a context that fit the place we were at. And I think that's going to be so important for any future goals we have, because I think it does sound kind of corny, but I think if we're going to get anywhere and further, then we need to, do things together. But that means that everybody understands like the importance of kind of a, the importance of using solar panels, the importance of trying to protect our waters, all that. And I think the kind of like mutual teaching is one way to do that. What drew me to apply kind of goes back to what I said before. I really, I've lived in Tucson, Arizona my whole life. My family's here, and part of even my culture is to be so close to your family. But I knew that I needed to learn more to become a more well-rounded adult. So I decided to do something out of my comfort zone and join a scholarship and see if I had the skills to do what was asked of me. And so that's kind of what led me there. And yeah, I think I kind of covered that too. The most impactful part was just meeting the students, and I still think about them all the time. And I wish we could go, back to Dine College, but eventually, maybe someday we can go back to Dine College. But it's just been really impactful to me as well, because I ended up switching my, I've had a, like I said, non-traditional way of like doing this whole college thing. And I ended up switching advisors, but I ended up switching advisors and research topics. That was like the best choice for me. But then I was still able, like, there's this recent, like, kind of like application, and I was like able to fill it out. My advisor really liked it. Like, I kind of pushed for it and my advisor really liked it. And I was able to do that because of the skills I got from like IndigeFEWSS. I used like a word that I learned in one of my classes. It was like epistemology. He's like, wow, that was really impressive, Marissa. And I was like, yes, my advisor said I like did something impressive. So I mentioned that because I think that that's skills I got from IndigeFEWSS. So I'm always long-winded, but I hope that kind of answered the question.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think the details matter. So I thank you for sharing those details. So I wonder if Jameis Lee is available to speak next. Jameis, are you still zoomed
I
in?
am here. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, and don't forget to say your major. Marissa is in chemical environmental engineering. And go ahead, James.
All right, yeah. My name is James. I am a master's student in the controlled environment agriculture track. So this is my second year, but due to COVID, I'll probably extend it a semester just because I didn't get my internship done. But the reason that I decided to join Indigenfuse was actually, it was pretty interesting. So I applied for this program because I was always interested in seeing how controlled environment agriculture, specifically greenhouses, hydroponics, aquaponics, things could translate into tribal communities. And if it was something that was feasible, something that could bring, that gap in food sovereignty that we had, kind of address some of those issues. But when I first got into my master's program, I really wanted to work with tribal communities, but I couldn't find that avenue to do that. As good as all the advisors and professors are through the biosystems engineering, like I couldn't find that connection that I wanted. And then one of my friends and or trainees that was part of this program was like, hey, you should look into IndigeFuse. And so I was like, okay, I'd be interested in doing that. And then literally the next day I get an email from Kara, and she was asking if we could meet. And so we got together, we chatted a little bit about the program, and I found that this was the perfect fit because it brought in that aspect of working with the tribal community, especially with the Dine. So I am Navajo. I grew up in Arizona. I never grew up on the reservation, but my family is from the reservation. My dad had a very strong connection back there. That's where his home is. That's where all my family's at. So it's a little bit different for me, but I've always wanted to go back and give back to my tribal community because every time that I go and visit family members out there, I see the issues that they face as far as no running water, no electricity. They depend a lot on just not agriculture, but they do a lot of they have sheep, so that's what they depend on. But then they don't do a lot of agriculture, which they used to do in the past. But with the whole issue with water and the conditions of the soil, like it just wasn't possible. So for me, in the back of my mind, I was always interested in seeing how we could make that more of a sustainable place that they could really use to live off of. And so, so long story short, this program has allowed me to make those connections to hopefully go to Dine College and work with tribal community college students out there, because I really do enjoy working with students and seeing how this program can translate into my future goals. I would really like to be able to go back and work out on on Navajo Nation, and eventually be able to hopefully find a job either as an educational specialist or as a consultant in agriculture and controlled environment systems, and really being able to give back. So this program has enabled me to do that, but it's also given me a lot of the tools that I didn't know that I had. Being an interdisciplinary program, it means that I meet a lot of students from different backgrounds. So prior to this, I did a lot of health education stuff. I was very entrenched in medicine and things like that. And so shifting to this more agriculture and engineering, like I didn't have a lot of connections. I didn't know a lot of people. But being able to be part of this interdisciplinary group, like I've just been so immersed in all of this engineering terms and agricultural terms, and I've learned so much from it that I feel confident in my skills, even though I'm not as experienced or have as much experience as some students. Like I feel like I'm learning enough to be successful when I graduate. And then also to be able to share, the things that I've learned through this program. I get so much out of the speakers that come and talk. I really loved our last speaker, Dr. Tallbear. Like I feel like I connected a lot with her and learned a lot from her. And so every week that we have those native STEM speakers, like I feel like I'm able to make connection. And so it's really been something that I've been able to hopefully use moving forward and becoming more confident in my skills as a master's student, and hopefully becoming more prepared for my professional life after school. So I feel like I've gotten a lot out of this program. So yeah, so if you guys have any questions.
Thanks very much, Jameis. I appreciate hearing from you about that. And I wonder if William would join us for a sec, and William, share your experience as a trainee before we move into some more general conversation and Q&A.
Sure. Can you all hear me? All right, so my name is William Borkin. I'm a second-year master's student in soil and water science. So I'm in the environmental science department, and before coming to U of A, I was actually an archaeologist. So I dealt a lot with being like on the construction side of projects, working with tribal monitors and doing consultation. And things that I noticed were just lacking were how much of the Indigenous perspectives were lacking. Like we would record so many things that they would tell us, and then we'd go to write it into the reports, and it would get cut out. And I thought that that really, showed a lack of respect for the types of knowledge that were present and being portrayed to the public and anyone who would eventually be reading about the sites that were ultimately getting destroyed. So I left in my career, and I was really looking forward to starting something new. My partner is Dine, and her family lives in Chinle, and I wanted to find something that could sort of allow me to work responsibly and respectfully on the Navajo Nation and do something that would be fulfilling for me, but also give back to the community. So I really was drawn to the soil and water science program. My goal is to work on uranium contamination remediation. So there's a lot of abandoned uranium mines, as you might know, and they affect the water quality for a lot of communities on the Navajo Nation. And while it's difficult to go in as an outsider, I'm working towards developing a relationship with agencies on the Navajo Nation that do work in remediation, and ultimately it's difficult with COVID, but the amount of like connections that I've made through both the Native Voices in STEM speaker series and the also the workshops that we're exposed to, meeting professionals in the fields that I'd like to get into, have really been eye-opening for me and given me a lot of voice to sort of like explore where a career could go. So I've been really thankful for IndigeFEWSS for giving me the opportunity to meet both professionals and academics that are interested in making the environment sustainable and livable for communities that have been negatively impacted by like things like mineral extraction. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Thanks.
Thank you so much, William, for sharing your experience and some of the benefits to your career prospects and how you think about that and go about that. So we have time now to open up to Q&A from prospective applicants. And we also have the opportunity for anyone attending to request a breakout small discussion with one of our current trainees if you want to ask some more questions in a smaller setting instead of in this large group setting. But I would like to open it up and invite people to put your questions in the chat or to unmute yourself and ask your question, because you've got a whole slew of us here who are happy to reply. Torin, thanks for putting that into the chat. What makes someone a good fit for the IndigeFuse traineeship? I wonder if one of our current trainees could speak to what you think made you a good fit for the traineeship.
I can say a little something. So as far as what made me a good fit, I felt like a lot of the goals that IndigeFuse had laid out in their program were things that I felt like I aligned with personally. But I mean, if you just have a desire to kind of work in more of an interdisciplinary field or get those skills of being able to work with other people that aren't necessarily so focused in your major, but that have a kind of broader perspective of how to tackle issues, I feel like it gives you a good opportunity to be able to like work through problems and get different perspectives and then learn how to apply those perspectives into solving a very complicated problem. So that was a big draw for me, just being able to work with other students from other programs, because like I said, like I felt like I wasn't finding my direct connection that I wanted within the program that I was in at the moment. So then after I was able to find this program, like I was able to find students that had kind of similar thinking processes, but that came from different backgrounds. Like I said, I did a lot of health stuff prior to this. So it was really interesting to be able to hear my perspective from that angle, and then also listening, like William said, he's an archaeologist, so he brings a lot to the table. There's another student, Amy, who is also in the same program that I'm in, but she still brings in different things that I don't necessarily bring in because she does a lot more in a greenhouse, whereas I do more educational things. So just being able to work with different people from different backgrounds, I think was a big draw and what would qualify you. Like if you're really interested in learning how your education can be applied into a community setting to kind of help that community, I think it should be a real draw for you. And then they also give you a lot of support. They give you a lot of insight on how to tackle those problems that we're going to be facing for the rest of our future, for the foreseeable future. So I think it gives you a lot of good insight into smaller communities that have such big problems that we are able to tackle together. So.
Thanks very much, Jameis. I appreciate that. And Veronique asks, have you had any students or trainees with a background in planning? I graduated last semester with my undergrad, but just curious on how flexible the program is with degrees and eligibility. So I don't believe that we've had a person with a planning background, but we do have a lot of flexibility to have trainees who are interested in various lines of research. And as Jameis was just saying about the interdisciplinary nature of our community engagement and our pilot project, I do think that that diverse skills, that trainees who bring a diverse set of skills and different interests would all contribute to our mission. Karletta, would you like to speak more on that?
Yes, we have students from all different majors, even geography and American Indian Studies. So as Jameis was explaining, I think the key that connects us all is the passion to work with communities, Indigenous communities or developing communities, and making a difference through the research that we do.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And then Melvin asks, how do faculty select current courses and new courses offered? And I can speak a little bit to that. So we accept trainees from all different departments and majors across campus, and so we don't have any involvement in your major coursework. However, we do require PhD trainees to take the Graduate Interdisciplinaries Program PhD minor. So all PhD students at the University of Arizona are required to have a minor, and IndigeFEWSS trainees are required to have the IndigeFEWSS minor. So our traineeship program is Indigenous Food, Energy, and Water Security and Sovereignty. The graduate interdisciplinary minor is Indigenous Food, Energy, and Water Systems. So we go through the graduate interdisciplinary programs, and we go through our core GIDP faculty to select the courses that are required of students for the PhD minor. And that comes up for review occasionally, but right now we ask students to select one of 4 courses from the systems, one of 4 courses from the fundamentals, one of 3 courses from American Indian Studies, and everybody takes the unit operations course, which is something to do with water in remote communities. I don't have the exact title memorized. So Melvin, I'm not sure if that addressed your question exactly. Do you have a follow-up? Other questions?
Hi, everybody. My name is Kunal, and I was wondering if you could talk more about the internships and pilot projects. I'm like super curious on like how, I think we've heard a lot about the traineeship part of it and how students are learning and engaging with different people. I would love to hear more about how we can be of service and show up in the community and what those kinds of projects look like.
Thank you, Kunal. Great to see you. Thanks for attending. So the pilot project is really a vehicle to working with the community and a way that we can all come together and have a project that we can work on, an ongoing project. So all the students have their own research project and they may or may not complement our pilot project. And so, so it can vary. For example, I think Christopher Yazzie is a good example. His research is really on the pilot project. But then we have students like, for example, Markel Begay, who is doing more on watershed hydrology within the Tsaile community. So her project is not necessarily even, directly connected to the pilot project. But then we engage with our tribal partners, specifically Dine College. And more recently, we started working with Six World Solutions, which is an even more recent partnership where it will be on the pilot project. So there's a spectrum on that. So your research may or may not focus on the pilot project, but the pilot project is a vehicle to engage with the community and opportunity for our trainees to participate in community engaged aspects. So with the internships, we've had also a varying interests and experiences. So for example, some of our trainees in electrical engineering and material science, they have been able to do internships at the at NRL, Sandia National Labs. And so they're very, typical industry partner internships. We also had a trainee that did an internship with the Tucson TEP, the Tucson Electrical Project. I forgot what the P stands for, but so they can be very typical like that, and the reason for that is so that our students can have more of an industry internships. However, we also had students that were more interested in the nonprofit internship experiences, which we welcome as well. And so we're very flexible in that way. But the goal is that we want our trainees to have a non-academic professional experience so that they can exercise their professional skills, be able to work in a very non-academic environment where they can just experience life, outside of academia, because most of the students don't go into academia. And so NSF really is wanting us to also provide that industry non-academic experiences.
Thank you. Karletta, may I add a couple thoughts to your comments? So we do want our trainees to have the internship, which is going to best prepare you for your career. So we do not dictate to you where you'll do your internship or what it has to be, but we will support you in seeking an internship that is best for your career goals. And so the NSF also offers annually a supplement for internships. So for students who want to do, say, a 6-month internship, we can support you in applying to the NSF for extra funding so that you would have 6 months of funding for a more intensive internship. And like Dr. Chief said, this is meant to enhance your professional development and increase your career prospects. In terms of the pilot project, we have 2 components that are going to be coupled. We have this solar nanofiltration device, and our first cohort of trainees who started in 2018 were able to help design and engineer that device, learn how to operate and maintain it, and then they created teaching modules and instructional modules around this solar nanofiltration device, and then we got to deploy the device and teach do some of the training at Dine College in the summer of 2019. The second part of that pilot project is the controlled environment agriculture piece. And so now we have a team of students, several of whom are on this Zoom, who are putting together a plan to update an existing hoop house at Dine College at the land grant office and to outfit it so that it contains this nanofiltration device for the irrigation and cooling, so that it contains the solar panels and battery storage so that everything is functioning off grid, and then it's a fully outfitted greenhouse with sensors and whatnot to grow various, whatever the community or the school school at Dine College wants to grow. So that's kind of phase 2 of the pilot project. And just like with phase 1 with the solar nanofiltration device, phase 2 will also involve creating training modules so that others can take this technology and build it or train on it for whatever purpose. So whether or not we actually get to go to Dine College again this summer, there are lots of opportunities to get involved with the pilot project from different angles. And it really does take an interdisciplinary team to do this, period, and then to do it well, and then to do it with cultural awareness and fellowship with the community who will ultimately take ownership and utilize this pilot project. So those are my comments, and there are lots of ways to get involved with the pilot project. Your research is going to be very specific and guided by your advisor in part, but your contributions to the pilot project don't have to parallel your research.
Thank you. That's super, super helpful.
So it's
I'd also like to expand upon Marissa's sharing of her experiences with the tribal college. And I think that's very unique to our program. I don't see other NRTs that have that tight of a connection to the tribal colleges. And it's very rewarding, I think, because our trainees learn about training and mentoring and teaching at a tribal college and what that means. So we work, one-on-one with the tribal college students for 4 days, and really get to know them and to understand the community and the culture while we're there at Dine College. And then every year, 2 to 3 of these tribal college students come to the University of Arizona, and they spend 7 to 8 weeks on campus, and either they'll rotate between the various research groups, or focus on one research area. But they do at least get an introduction to the greenhouses, to the water treatment systems, to the photovoltaics, and then they find a research project that they can focus on through the summer. And usually our trainees are part of that mentoring process. And it was really such a proud moment when one of the Dine College students did their research, and I took him to SACNAS, which is the Society for the Advancement of Native Americans in Science. And he presented his research poster to, a, a hall of several hundred other students from other, 4-year institutions. And he actually won an award for his poster in the engineering discipline. So here's a tribal college student that, came from a local Navajo community that was able to do this type of research that was recognized at a national level. And so it's just really neat and rewarding to see that process of all the mentoring that goes on, and just being able to be in part of a research that's really important to their communities. So I think that would be really unique, is the tribal college interaction that we do.
And even to add on to that, I remember the student she's talking about, and so there was we had 2 students who ended up doing summer internships. So in addition to the Dine College, that student came to the U of A for a while, or actually 2 students that I can think of, but I know there was more. They came to the U of A, and they were mentored by students. And so I didn't directly mentor the student, but I know that it was really rewarding to be around those students. They had so many questions, and we developed such a good friendship. And so that's why I was kind of looking forward to try to mentor a student this summer, because it's really rewarding. And it really, like I said, I learned, I continue to say, I learned so much from those students. And so it makes me more excited about my work to be around, such passionate students. So it's definitely something like mentorship. Sometimes like, oh, I don't have time to do this, I don't have time to do that, but mentorship really is an important component of being like a graduate student.
Thanks, Marissa, for contributing to this conversation. So it's 1:55 and we are due to wrap up in about 5 minutes. And I wonder if there are any other questions or current trainees, when you were curious about this program, was there anything that you learned after you got into it that you wish you had asked about before?
Could I ask a question?
Please, Peter, yeah.
Yeah, nice to see you. I'm wondering, like, kind of about the research collaboration process, like in what ways students have been able to kind of combine their like kind of their PhD like department majors, which for me at least would be like more on the theoretical side, with kind of collaborations with Indigenous communities and kind of much more applied, like actually like using the work to help Indigenous communities. Like, has that been a hard process for students to navigate, like kind of combining those two together with like potentially PhD advisors who are not as knowledgeable about the Indigenous side, and kind of, has that been a hard bridge to navigate, or has it been pretty easy in general? Does that make sense as a question?
Karletta, would you like to speak to that, or shall I?
I can answer part, and the students can also answer from their own experiences. We don't expect the students to lead the research that goes with the Indigenous communities, because that really involves, the faculty leadership to be the one to make sure the tribal protocols are in place, and to ensure that the proper approvals have been obtained. So it really varies, I think. So for example, those students that are doing work with the pilot project, that's what we have approvals for. And so our students can basically fall into our approval process if it fits within that. And then outside of that, we're supportive, but we do expect the faculty mentor or advisor to engage in that tribal consultation and tribal approval processes that are required with that. So it is also important to for us to communicate that with the faculty. And so we try to do that ongoing throughout the year, making sure they understand the requirements of the traineeship itself and what we're doing, on a monthly basis. So yeah, so it does vary, and I think that our goal is that the students gain that intercultural awareness, whether or not their research is heavily focused on Indigenous community or not. We realize that it may not, the timeline may not fit. Like, for example, for a master's project, it would be very short time. The time is very short to get all those approvals in place. But I think ultimately for us is that the trainees are getting that intercultural awareness, the training and how to work with an Indigenous community. And we provide the community experience when we go to that college, and when we do training workshops, or when we have a tribal college student participating. So that's the experiences we provide. And so, yeah, so it would vary with each traineeship, how that happens. But I also like to ask the trainees to also chime in on that question.
I can kind of try to explain. I think a master's program is really short, and one thing that we're learning in our IndigeFEWSS colloquiums are like this aspect of continued participatory research, and the fact that research isn't always done responsibly in Indigenous communities. So if we're going to be working with a small community, we need to be there frequently. And as a master's student, you may not have time to really like develop those relationships and honor them with a thesis project. Things that are beneficial within the IndigeFEWSS program are the ability to talk to Dine College students and other faculty who actually engage with those communities and get an idea of what it means to work with an Indigenous community. So for example, my project is studying the transport of uranium through fractured rock cores, and I'm doing a comparative study with soils from Monument Valley, and it's going to inform a little bit about what people in those communities can do to protect their water and to understand what the threats are from uranium contamination. But ultimately, what I would be able to do with the communities there is really limited during the program. I intend to continue the work after I graduate. And I think that's something that's really impressed upon us, that we need to be willing to participate beyond our programs. So yeah, hope that can give a little bit of insight.
Thanks, William. I think that's really helpful, again, to have those specific examples. They can help anchor us. So it is 2:02 Mountain Standard Time, and we had planned to end at about 2 o'clock. So I would like to thank everyone for joining us today and let everybody know that I will stay on Zoom a little bit longer in case you have any additional Q&A that you'd like to ask. And if other people want to stay, you're welcome to, but please, we are going to wrap this up, and I'm going to take us off Facebook Live now. Karletta, do you have any final words?
Thank you for joining us, and I hope to see your application. And remember to let us know about your passion to work with Indigenous communities, and it will really come out to us when we're doing the reviews. And I look forward to seeing your application. Thank you.
Thank you.